Welcome to today's podcast. We'll be discussing the book, Meaningful Work, Viktor Frankl's Legacy for the 21st Century. This book explores the increasingly relevant topic of finding meaning in our work, drawing heavily on the influential ideas of Viktor Frankl. Logotherapy, at its core, posits that the primary drive in humans is not pleasure, as Freud suggested, but the search for meaning in life. Existential analysis, as its philosophical and scientific basis, explores the individual's unique existence and the responsibility that comes with the freedom to choose one's attitude and actions, even in the face of suffering. These concepts directly apply to the workplace because they suggest that individuals are most fulfilled when they find meaning and purpose in their work, not just material rewards. The author argues that we are witnessing a shift in how work is understood and organized. We're moving away from a purely economic model that prioritizes productivity and profit towards a more humanistic approach that values meaning, purpose, and employee well-being. This shift aligns with Frankl's emphasis on the will to meaning as a fundamental human drive, and his assertion that true fulfillment comes from aligning our actions with our values. The book showcases leaders and organizations that prioritize serving a purpose larger than themselves, whether it's contributing to social good, benefiting their communities, or empowering their employees to find meaning in their work. The book serves as a powerful reminder that finding meaning in our work is not a luxury, but a fundamental human need. It highlights the responsibility of both individuals and organizations to create work environments that foster purpose, well-being, and a connection to something larger than ourselves. So let's dive into today's podcast. As always, please share, like, and subscribe.
Okay, so today we're really diving deep into this whole idea of meaningful work. You know, you sent over some really fascinating writings about Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And honestly, his ideas just feel so relevant today, even more so than ever, I think.
It's pretty amazing how, Frankl's experiences in those camps, the concentration camps,
Right.
led to such profound and enduring insights. His idea that we humans are driven by this, will to meaning, even when facing unbelievable suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That really gets you thinking about what truly matters.
And he was so adamant that meaning wasn't just about, chasing happiness, right? There's something deeper there.
Absolutely. Frankl was, convinced that happiness is more like a byproduct of a meaningful life, not the end goal.
Yeah.
Because if we make happiness our main target, our sole focus,
Yeah.
it can kind of backfire and actually lead to a sense of emptiness, what he called an existential vacuum.
So it's less about just feeling good all the time and more about having a sense of purpose.
Yeah, you get it. It's about finding something that truly resonates with you deep down, something that gives your life direction, significance.
It's interesting because some recent research we were looking at actually kind of backs this up. There was a study about people who, they don't really find life particularly meaningful, but they're not necessarily unhappy either. They called this group existentially indifferent.
Existentially indifferent. That's a new one. That's fascinating, actually. It really highlights how meaning and happiness, while related,
Right.
aren't necessarily the same.
Yeah.
Which kind of naturally brings us to a pretty big question for us today, for the 21st century. How do we even begin to find meaningful work in today's world with everything going on?
Right. And it's definitely not as simple as it used to be, right? The way we work is just changing so rapidly with globalization, automation, the whole gig economy thing. All these trends are shaking things up, big time.
Yeah, it's like we're in this whirlwind of constant change, And those old ways of doing things with the rigid hierarchies, the extrinsic rewards.
Okay, you do this, you get that approach.
Exactly. It's just not cutting it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
People want more. They're craving something more.
It's like we've gone beyond those carrots and sticks to motivate people. People want to be inspired, to feel like their work actually has a purpose, a real impact.
For sure. And the really cool thing is, we found some incredible examples, like actual companies who are really, I think, leading the way here.
Yeah.
Yeah, creating environments that prioritize autonomy, mastery, purpose, basically what Daniel Pink calls motivation 3.0.
Yes. I love his work.
Yeah, and the best part is this isn't just some feel-good initiative,
Right.
These companies are seeing actual real-world results. Higher engagement,
Wow.
increased productivity. They've got a workforce that's like way more resilient and adaptable than before.
One example that just completely blew me away was Patagonia.
Patagonia, yeah, they're great.
They've built their whole culture around meaningful work, right? They encourage their employees to pursue their passions.
I love that.
And get this, surfing. They actually encourage surfing.
No way.
That's amazing.
I know, right? And at the same time, they're making a positive impact on the environment.
It's so great to see a company that really walks the talk. It's not just lip service.
Yeah.
They're not just offering perks.
Right.
They're truly weaving meaning into the very essence of their organization,
It's in their DNA.
Exactly. It's about shifting those old conventional ideas of what work should be,
Totally. Like they're proving that you can be successful, purpose-driven. At the same time, absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, we also came across some cautionary tales.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Those companies that try to force meaning, like with those cheesy team building activities.
Oh, yeah.
Or those superficial CSR programs that are just for show.
Right. It's so transparent.
It's a classic case of you can lead a horse to water. You can't force meaning. It's got to be authentic, like truly a part of the company's DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where leadership comes in, right? That's where it's so crucial.
100%. Leaders who are self-aware,
Yeah.
leading with integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and they really prioritize building genuine connections,
Yeah.
Those are the ones who create workplaces where meaning can actually, thrive.
It's about making people feel valued, respected, empowered to do their best.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we've talked about, Frankl's ideas, how the working world is changing, but what about, right now, in this moment, how can people listening find more meaning in their own work lives?
Well, Frankl actually believed that we discover meaning not in some big grand scheme, but in those specific situations we face every day.
Interesting.
So a good starting point is really asking yourself maybe some tough questions.
Yeah, what kind of questions?
Like, what are my strengths? What kind of work truly makes me come alive? What gets me excited? How can I use my skills to actually make a difference? Even if it's a small way.
Yeah.
It's about those little things too.
It sounds simple, but I bet those questions can really make people think,
I think so, yeah. Because when we can align our work with our values, our passions, even those, little mundane tasks, they can actually start to feel meaningful.
It's about finding those little glimmers of purpose.
Right.
In everyday life.
Exactly. And let's be real, not everyone can just up and quit their job tomorrow to go chase their dream career.
Right.
Right,
unfortunately.
But even within, sometimes the limitations of our current jobs, there are usually more opportunities to find meaning than we realize.
Oh, interesting. This reminds me of the whole job crafting concept. It's about realizing that we have more agency, more power to shape our work experiences than we might think, Yeah,
you don't have to just sit and wait for the perfect job to magically appear.
Right.
It's about being proactive, taking the reins, and crafting a more meaningful experience within the role you're already in.
I love that. And that brings us to another layer of this whole conversation about meaningful work. Technology.
Oh, yeah, technology. That's a big one.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Right.
On one hand, it's changing how we work, often in really good ways, but it can also be this huge source of distraction, overwhelm.
So true.
So how do we find that balance? How do we, use technology without letting it basically run our lives?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think mindfulness is key.
Okay.
And not mindfulness is just another trendy thing to do.
Right.
But as a way of being more intentional about how we're actually interacting with technology, how much we let it into our lives.
So it's not about escaping technology altogether.
No, not at all.
It's about having a healthier relationship with it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like setting boundaries with it,
Okay.
reclaiming our attention and being more present,
Yeah.
Both in our work and our lives.
Right, because if we're constantly distracted by, notifications and everything,
Right.
it's so hard to tap into what actually matters.
Exactly. It pulls us in so many directions.
Okay, so before we dive deeper into that, I think it's time to maybe bring in a different perspective here, something that might seem a bit unexpected.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Ancient philosophy.
Ancient philosophy. Interesting. You know, it might seem a little, well, ancient,
Right.
but that ancient wisdom has a way of staying incredibly relevant, you know?
Yeah,
Even in our fast-paced, tech-obsessed world.
that's so true. Remember all those books you sent over about Stoicism
Yeah.
and Aristotelian ethics?
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I was a bit skeptical at first.
Right. I was like, okay, how is this going to apply to, you know, the modern world?
Right.
But then I start to see the connections, you know?
Yeah.
Like these philosophies, they offer this like timeless framework for dealing with all the challenges that life throws at us, you know?
Absolutely. And they're not just for like academics and philosophers anymore.
Right.
We're seeing this like resurgence of interest in these teachings from like business leaders to everyday people because they offer really practical guidance on living a good life, a meaningful life.
Right. It's like they tapped into these like fundamental truths about being human that are still so relevant today, even though they were written thousands of years ago.
Timeless wisdom, right?
Exactly. But, okay, how does this all tie back to our modern workplaces? What's the connection? At its core, it's about focusing on what you can actually control, accepting what you can't control, and then striving to live in a way that's in line with your values.
Okay. So that actually sounds very similar to what Frankl was saying about, you know, choosing our attitude in any given situation.
Exactly. It's about realizing that we have more agency than we often give ourselves credit for, even in work environments that might feel limiting or inflexible.
Right. Like we have a choice in how we respond to difficult coworkers, challenging projects.
Exactly. Yeah.
How we show up each day.
And that choice, that sense of agency, that can make all the difference when it comes to finding meaning and purpose in our work.
It's about shifting our focus away from the things we can't control to the things that we can, and focusing on how we can make a positive impact within our own sphere of influence, you know?
Love that. And, you know, it makes me think about the whole individual versus collective aspect of all this.
No, right.
Because on one hand, we're talking about personal responsibility.
Yeah.
But then we're also talking about collaboration, shared purpose.
So how do those two things work together?
That's a great question. It's not like an either-or situation, right? It's about finding that balance between pursuing our own individual passions and goals, but also contributing to something larger than ourselves, you know?
Finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when we can do that, we realize that we can actually achieve so much more together than we ever could alone.
And that our individual passions and talents, they kind of become amplified when we can align them with a collective purpose.
You got it. And you know what? A great example of that is the German Chamber Philharmonic Orchestra Bremen. They're incredible. So they actually operate without a conductor.
No conductor.
Nope. They rely completely on shared leadership and this like deep sense of trust between the musicians.
That's incredible. How do they even
I know, right?
stay in sync?
It's amazing. And it's a perfect example of how individual talent can come together and create something truly extraordinary.
It's like this beautiful metaphor for like the power of collaboration and shared purpose, you know?
Exactly. And it shows it's not about sacrificing individuality,
Right.
but about discovering ways to blend all those individual strengths into a harmonious whole.
I love that. That brings us to another really important element in all of this, developing our unique strengths and talents, you know? I was so fascinated by the work of Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson.
Oh, yeah, the character strengths and virtues guy.
They created that whole framework, and it's amazing.
Their research is like a treasure trove of insights into human potential.
It really is. They identified 24 character strengths that are universally valued, right? And their whole thing is that cultivating these strengths is essential for a good life.
Absolutely. And those strengths, they aren't limited to our personal lives, you know.
Right. They're incredibly important in our work lives, too.
100%.
For instance, strengths like creativity, curiosity, perseverance, those are huge in the workplace.
Absolutely. And, you know, instead of getting caught up in our weaknesses or things we're not so good at, we should be focusing on what we excel at, you know?
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
And when we play to our strengths, that's how we tap into that like flow state, right? Where work feels almost effortless and we're totally engaged.
Did you get lost in it? Right.
Yes, because you're so absorbed in what you're doing.
It's a clear sign you're using your strengths and tapping into those passions.
And it's about finding that alignment, right?
Yes.
Between who we are and what we do.
100%.
And I think when we find that, that's often where the deeper sense of meaning and fulfillment comes from.
Absolutely. It's about embracing our own uniqueness,
Yeah.
and finding ways to use our strengths to make a real positive impact. Because when we're genuinely energized by our work, it doesn't stop with us. It has this ripple effect, It impacts our colleagues, our communities, the world around us.
It's like this beautiful domino effect.
Exactly.
Speaking of finding that flow and aligning our work with our values, one of the books you shared really got me thinking on. It was the one about reinventing organizations.
You mean Frederick Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations?
Yes, that one. That was a fascinating read.
It really is. He goes deep into how human consciousness has evolved over time.
Right.
And how that's directly reflected in the way we structure our organizations, from those ancient tribes all the way to modern day companies.
It's like this wild ride through history.
It really is.
But I was super drawn to his vision for a new kind of organization.
Oh, yeah.
One that's way more purpose-driven, self-managing, and aligned with our core values as humans.
What I find so compelling about Laloux's work is that he doesn't just throw out theories,
Right.
He actually gives you concrete examples of organizations that are already operating in this new way.
Really?
Yeah. And they're thriving. They're more agile, more innovative,
Right.
and their employees are way more fulfilled and engaged.
That's amazing. He talks about Buurtzorg, right? The Dutch home care organization.
Oh, yeah. Buurtzorg, they're incredible.
But completely self-managing, no middle manager.
Yeah.
And the nurses have so much autonomy.
That's amazing.
Over their schedules, their budgets, even patient care.
And the results really speak for themselves. Higher quality care, lower costs, and the nurses are ridiculously happy with their jobs.
It really makes you question those old school top-down approaches to management.
For sure.
What if more companies embraced this model? What if we focused on empowering employees instead of trying to control every little detail?
Right. Imagine the possibilities. And it's not just about creating happier workplaces.
Right.
Laloux actually suggests that he calls them teal organizations.
Teal organization.
Yeah, he thinks they're better equipped to actually tackle those really complex issues we're facing today, like climate change,
Wow.
social inequality, things like that. Because they're more adaptable, more resilient, and they operate from a place of interconnectedness.
That's they're hardwired to make positive change.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's be realistic for a sec. Not every company is going to do a complete 180 overnight, right?
It's true. It's a process.
So for those of us who are working in those more traditional settings, those more structured environments,
Yeah.
how can we inject some meaning and purpose into our work without, causing a full-blown revolution?
That's the question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it circles back to the idea that we're not just given meaning. We create it through our choices, our actions, and the connections we make. Even within, maybe some of those more rigid structures we might find ourselves in, we can still find ways to make work feel fulfilling.
So it's about being proactive.
Yeah.
Taking initiative, being creative, and really connecting with our colleagues on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's about shifting our mindset from what's expected of me to what can I bring to the table? How can I make a difference?
And if you happen to work for a company that's already embracing these new ways of working.
Lucky you.
Right. That's amazing. But for those who aren't, don't give up hope.
Exactly. Don't despair. There's so much you can do on your own to cultivate a more meaningful experience.
It all comes back to personal responsibility.
Yes.
Which is a big theme in Frankl's work, Laloux's work, so many others.
It's about recognizing the power we have, even in situations that might feel limiting at first glance.
So it's about asking ourselves,
Yeah.
what am I really passionate about? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world?
Yes. And then taking those answers and looking for ways to actually align our actions with those values.
I love that, there's this quote, I don't know if you've heard it, it's by Howard Thurman.
I don't think so. Tell me.
He says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Isn't that great?
It's so true.
It's a good reminder that meaning it's not something we find out there. It's something that we cultivate within ourselves.
Totally. We have to tap into that inner spark, that thing that lights us up, and let that fuel our work.
I love that. And And that actually reminds me, we were talking earlier about aligning our work with our values, right?
Yeah.
And there's this whole other area that I think often gets overlooked, which is this idea of good work, as opposed to just like getting the job done.
Oh, I see. That's a really important distinction.
It is.
Because good work, and this is how like Howard Gardner and his colleagues define it, it goes way beyond just like efficiency.
Okay.
It's about excellence, it's about ethics, it's about true engagement.
So it's got to be aligned with your values.
Yes. And it also has to contribute to something meaningful, to a greater purpose.
It's not just about checking things off our to-do list. It's about approaching our work with this sense of purpose, integrity, and a commitment to quality.
And it's about finding that sweet spot, where your skills and your values and your passions all intersect with the needs of the world.
And you know what? That actually reminds me of that company. What was it called? Walla Heilmittel GmbH?
Oh, yeah. The German company.
Yes. They make those natural cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, right? They've taken social responsibility and sustainability, and they've woven it into their entire business model.
It's impressive.
It's incredible. They prioritize their employees' well-being. They're all about sustainable practices, and they're actively involved in social causes.
And they're killing it, business-wise.
I know. It just goes to show, right, that profit and purpose, they're not mutually exclusive.
Not at all. In fact, I think when we align our work with our values, when we're striving to make a positive impact, it often leads to both personal fulfillment and business success.
It's like that sense of purpose, it just fuels innovation.
It does.
And drives success.
Totally.
Which brings up this other question I've been pondering. Is meaningful work just like a means to an end? Is it just a way to achieve happiness, well-being, success?
Right.
Or is it actually an end in itself?
Ooh, that's a big one. I love it. It's a question like philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries.
I know.
And I honestly think the answer is it's complicated.
Okay.
There's no easy answer. On one hand, there's no doubt that meaningful work can contribute to our overall happiness and well-being.
Right, like when you enjoy your work.
Yes. When you find your work fulfilling, it aligns with your values, it uplifts you, it reduces stress, it brings a sense of purpose.
Okay, but it's bigger than just our own personal satisfaction, really.
100%. Meaningful work, it has this ripple effect that extends outward.
Okay, how so?
Like when we're truly passionate about what we do and we're using our skills to make a real difference, it not only impacts us, but it impacts our colleagues, our families, our communities, even the world at large.
It's like this chain reaction of good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about us. It's about the positive change we can create in the world around us.
So it's about what we can give back.
Yes. Meaningful work allows us to contribute to something so much larger than ourselves and hopefully leave the world a little bit better than we found it. It's about making a difference, whether it's big or small, and finding that deep sense of fulfillment in that contribution.
I love that. And that makes me think about the importance of navigating this whole ever-changing work landscape that we're in.
Yeah, it's constantly shifting.
It is. And figuring out how we can create these more meaningful experiences, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
So what are the key skills, the mindsets that can help people thrive in the 21st century workplace and beyond? Absolutely crucial is adaptability,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
because the world of work is changing at an unprecedented rate.
It's true.
Those who can embrace that change, learn new skills, be adaptable to new situations, those are the people who are going to be in the best position to not only handle the challenges that are coming our way, but to also capitalize on the opportunities.
So it's about being a lifelong learner.
Yes.
Yes.
Always staying curious,
Mm-hmm.
eager to push beyond those comfort zones.
I like that. And it's about cultivating what they call a growth mindset, right?
Exactly.
Believing that you can develop your abilities with enough effort, and dedication.
It's about not shying away from challenges, but seeing them as opportunities to learn and grow.
And another really crucial skill in all of this is collaboration, right?
Oh, collaboration is huge, especially now.
Because work is just getting more and more complex, more interconnected.
So true.
And so being able to work effectively with other people
Yes.
across disciplines, across cultures, it's more important than ever.
Being a good communicator, a team player, knowing how to listen well.
Right.
And we can't forget about empathy. Being able to actually put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right. Really understand their perspective.
Exactly. That's so key.
Something that keeps coming up for me in all of this is the role of technology. Because on the one hand, it's the driving force behind so many of these changes we're talking about in the workplace.
Totally.
But it can also be so overwhelming and distracting. You know, it makes it hard to connect with what really matters sometimes.
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure. Technology has this incredible power to connect us,
It does.
amplify our impact.
Right.
But if we're not careful, it can also lead to burnout,
Oh, yeah.
information overload, that feeling of constantly being on
Right. So finding that balance, that's really the key.
100%. How do we use technology in a way that enhances our lives
Right.
without letting it consume us?
Right. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but mindfulness, that seems to be a big piece of the puzzle.
It really is. We have to become more aware of how we're spending our time, our energy. We have to set those healthy boundaries
With ourselves, with technology.
with everything.
Yeah.
And make conscious choices about how we're interacting with the digital world.
So it's about taking back our attention, our focus,
Yes.
so we can really be present in our work
Mm-hmm.
and in our lives.
And you know what? That actually reminds me of something else.
Okay, what's that?
This whole conversation keeps circling back to the importance of cultivating our inner world, you know?
What do you mean?
Our values, our passions, our sense of purpose.
Mhm.
It's almost like we have to do that inner work before we can even begin to create meaningful experiences externally.
So it's not just about finding meaningful work, it's about becoming more meaningful people.
You got it. And that journey, while it definitely takes some effort, it's incredibly rewarding. It's about really stepping into our full potential, both as individuals and as contributors to something much bigger than ourselves.
I love that. You know, another concept that really resonated with me as we were doing all this research was Frankl's idea of self-transcendence. He describes it as like this ability to move beyond our own egocentric concerns and connect with something larger than ourselves.
It's about recognizing that we're a part of something much bigger. Right.
Exactly. Whether it's our families, our communities, humanity as a whole, even nature.
And it's about finding ways to contribute to that bigger picture.
And that doesn't necessarily have to involve these like grand gestures, right?
No, not at all. Self-transcendence can be found in those small, everyday acts of kindness, compassion, generosity.
It's about being present in our interactions.
Yes.
Being empathetic, you know, recognizing that we're all connected.
And those small acts, they can have a ripple effect too. They can create positive change that extends way beyond ourselves.
It's about shifting our focus from what's in it for me to how can I contribute?
Yes. How can I make a difference?
And when we approach our work from that place,
It changes everything, right?
it really does. It not only transforms our own experience, but it impacts the lives of those around us too.
And it makes me think about how important it is to recognize that meaningful work, it's really about what we give, not just what we get.
It's about making a contribution.
Exactly. Using those unique gifts and talents that we have to make a real difference.
And when we can tap into that,
Mhm.
when we're giving our best selves to our work, to our relationships, to the world around us, that's when we truly come alive.
That's it. That's the magic.
So we've talked a lot about the individual aspect of this, you know, finding meaning in our own lives.
Right.
But what about the role of organizations in all of this? Like, what can companies do? What can leaders do to actually create environments where people can thrive, where they can find purpose in their work?
That's a fantastic question. And I think it starts with a fundamental shift in perspective.
Okay, what do you mean?
Like, organizations need to start seeing their employees not just as workers, you know, as cogs in a machine,
Right.
but as whole people.
With needs, with desires, with passions.
Exactly. With their own unique set of aspirations and desires for meaning and purpose.
It's about creating a culture that values people as human beings.
100%.
Yeah.
Not just for the work they produce. And that involves, like we were talking about earlier with Daniel Pink, fostering autonomy.
Right. That self-direction.
Yeah. And mastery, giving people opportunities to develop their skills and grow.
And purpose.
Yes. Helping them understand how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
It's about creating an environment of trust, right?
Sure.
Transparency, open communication.
Absolutely. It's about empowering employees to be active participants in their own growth and development.
Which makes so much sense.
It does. And the research backs it up.
Right.
When people feel valued, when they feel respected, when they feel empowered,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be more engaged,
Right.
more motivated, and way more committed to their work.
But it's surprising how many workplaces still struggle with this.
I know, right? You'd think it would be a no-brainer. So what can companies actually do, like practically speaking? What are some tangible steps they can take to create these more meaningful work experiences?
Yeah, how do you actually put this into practice?
One really powerful strategy is to actually involve employees in the meaning-making process.
What do you mean?
So instead of just imposing a top-down vision of what the company stands for, what its purpose is,
Right?
why not create opportunities for employees to share their own ideas, their own passions?
Oh, interesting. Let them contribute to shaping the direction of the organization.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
about
no.
tapping into that collective wisdom and creativity that already exists within the workforce.
So instead of dictating what the meaning is,
They're co-creating it together.
exactly. Because meaning is often most powerful when it emerges organically from genuine collaboration and shared purpose, you know?
Makes sense. It
Ah.
becomes something that people truly believe in and feel connected to.
And that ties directly into the idea of providing opportunities for growth and development too, right?
Right, like investing in your employees.
Yeah. When people feel like they're constantly learning, expanding their skill set,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredibly motivating. It's about creating that culture of continuous learning where it's safe to take risks, to experiment, to grow those skills.
And that requires giving people the resources they need to actually do that.
Exactly. Training, mentoring, coaching, all of that. It's an investment, you know? It is an investment. And another really powerful way to create those meaningful experiences is to connect employees to something larger than themselves.
100%. Beyond those day-to-day tasks, there has to be something more.
Right. So how can companies do that effectively?
Well, one way is to actually align the company's mission and values with a social or environmental cause that the employees are passionate about.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Give them opportunities to volunteer, to give back to their communities, or even just highlight the positive impact that their work is already having.
Right, so they can see that their work actually matters.
Exactly. That it has a tangible impact on the world beyond just, the bottom line.
And when you can tap into that sense of shared purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the magic really happens.
It's so powerful. It creates a deeper sense of meaning and motivation for everyone.
So it's about shifting away from that solely profit-driven mentality and embracing a more holistic approach.
Exactly. Recognizing that businesses don't exist in a vacuum. They have a responsibility to be a force for good in the world. And that responsibility, it can totally go hand in hand with success.
One doesn't have to come at the expense of the other.
Exactly. You could do well by doing good.
I love that. But we should acknowledge that creating this kind of environment, a truly meaningful work environment, it's not a one-and-done thing, right?
Oh, definitely not. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yes. And it requires constant attention, intentionality, a willingness to be flexible, to adapt and evolve.
It's about creating that culture of continuous improvement, where leaders are constantly seeking feedback, they're listening to their employees, and they're making changes as needed.
And that openness to change, that's something we need to carry with us as we navigate the future of work, too. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Because with technology evolving at this lightning speed and the very nature of work shifting beneath our feet.
It's like we're standing at the edge of something brand new, something full of potential.
Right.
But we don't quite have it all figured out yet.
Exactly. But instead of trying to predict the future, we have this amazing opportunity to actually shape it, you know?
We do. We have more power than we often realize.
We have the power to choose what kind of world we want to live in, what role we want work to play in our lives, in society as a whole.
It's about reclaiming our agency, and being active participants in building a future that aligns with our values, our aspirations, our hopes.
Yeah. So where do we even begin?
Well, it starts with asking those fundamental questions.
Like what?
Like, what kind of world do we truly want to create? What role do we envision work playing in that world? And how can we, as individuals and as a collective, use our skills, our talents, our passions to build a future that's more just, more sustainable, and ultimately more fulfilling for everyone?
Those are big questions.
They are, but they're essential.
They are.
Yeah.
While we may not have all the answers right now, I truly believe that by leaning into those questions, with curiosity, with courage, we can navigate all of this uncertainty that lies ahead and create a future of work that is both meaningful and impactful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And you know what? I'm actually feeling really optimistic about the future because I'm seeing more and more people waking up to the importance of meaning and purpose, not just in their careers, but in their lives as a whole.
I see it too. There's this growing movement towards building more human-centered workplaces where individuals are actually valued.
It's about time, right?
I know, it's about time. And where people feel respected, empowered to contribute their unique talents and make a difference.
And the key will be finding that balance, that sweet spot between all of these incredible technological advancements and our own well-being.
Right.
Between pursuing our individual passions and contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
It's about using technology as a tool to enhance our humanity,
Exactly.
not diminish it.
I love that.
And recognizing that when we align those passions with a shared sense of purpose, that's when we can really create extraordinary change in the world.
So well said.
Yeah.
And, you were talking earlier about how the future of work is uncertain.
It is.
And while that's true, I also think it's incredibly exciting.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we're on the cusp of something brand new. We have this incredible opportunity to redefine what work actually means to us.
To rewrite the rules?
Yes. It's time to reclaim that narrative and create a future where work isn't seen as this burden, this chore, but as a way to express our passions,
right?
A source of fulfillment, a way to make a real difference in the world.
I love that. I am so here for that. We've been talking a lot about finding meaning in our work. But what about that whole idea of a calling? Is that something we're all supposed to, discover? Or is it more, nuanced than that?
That's a question that's been around forever.
Right.
Some people, they believe that we all have this one true path, this preordained calling that's just waiting for us to find it.
Okay.
While others see it as something that we develop over time, a sense of purpose that kind of emerges organically from our experiences, our passions.
So it's not necessarily about waiting for that, a lightning bolt of inspiration. It's more about being open to exploring different options and seeing where they lead.
Exactly. It's like our callings, they're not static, They evolve and shift just like we do as we learn and grow.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like a passion project, it could totally blossom into a fulfilling career. Or maybe a volunteer role you take on. It uncovers a hidden talent you never knew you had.
Oh, wow.
Just a journey, not a destination.
Okay. Which is actually kind of freeing when you think about it that way. Right? You don't have to have it all figured out right now.
Not at all.
Which, speaking of, this reminds me of Leonard Bernstein.
Oh, yeah, the conductor.
Yes. He had this, really deep connection with Beethoven's music.
He was obsessed, right?
He was. And he talked about how he felt like Beethoven, centuries later, was still speaking to this, timeless human search for truth and meaning,
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Just shows how meaning can transcend, time and place.
It does. And just like Beethoven's music spoke to Bernstein, I think our own callings, they can often come from unexpected places.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe you're faced with this challenge at work and it forces you to tap into some skill or talent that you didn't even know you had.
Right. You surprise yourself.
Yes. And suddenly you're energized and passionate.
It's a beautiful thing. It's about embracing those detours, those unexpected turns in the road.
Totally, because you never know where they might lead. And speaking of journeys, wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive today.
We really have. We've talked about meaningful work, personal growth, social responsibility.
It's a lot, but it all feels connected, don't you think?
Oh, without a doubt. It's all part of this intricate tapestry of being human, we all have this deep desire for our work to reflect our values.
Right, to use our talents and gifts.
Exactly. And for it to nurture those meaningful connections that we crave.
Yeah.
That sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves.
And that brings us back to those companies we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Like who?
Like Patagonia. They're not just selling jackets, right?
No, definitely.
They're promoting a way of life, a commitment to the environment. Their employees, they're not just punching a clock. They're living and breathing those values through their work.
Exactly. And that's what makes their whole approach so unique and impactful,
It's inspiring.
It really is. It's about finding that beautiful intersection between your passions, your skills, and a larger purpose. It's about doing work that nourishes you from the inside out, while also contributing to the greater good.
So well said. So it's not just about finding meaningful work. It's about cultivating more meaningful lives, period.
100%. It's about looking at the bigger picture, aligning our work with our values, our relationships, our hopes for a better world. It's about recognizing that our work It's not separate from who we are. It's an extension of ourselves.
Yes, I love that. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I really hope everyone listening is walking away feeling inspired and empowered, like they can actually make a difference.
Me too. Because the search for meaningful work, for a life filled with purpose, it's an ongoing journey, you know?
It is.
It's all about exploring, discovering, trying new things. And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Right, we're all in this together.
Exactly. Lean on your people, you know?
Yeah.
Find mentors, connect with those who share your passions. Because when we support each other, when we challenge each other to grow, and when we stay open to new possibilities.
That's how we create a world where work isn't just a way to pay the bills.
Right.
It's a source of joy,
Yes.
purpose, and positive contribution to the world.
So, to everyone listening, keep exploring those passions, keep asking those tough questions, keep growing and learning, and never, ever stop believing in your power to make a difference. It all comes back to that, doesn't it? That constant search for meaning, for understanding, for connection. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.